The BC government has bought a hotel to house the homeless. Now, before I get into this story, just to give you an overview right now what's happening in terms of the coronavirus, British Columbia, the NDP government in British Columbia, the only NDP government in all of Canada, so NDP being the more left-wing worker party in Canada, they have handled the coronavirus the best out of any other province. So right now they're averaging under 30 new cases a day. Some days it's under 10 new cases. Whereas compared to, say, Ontario, where we have a PC government, a conservative government, we're averaging about 300 new cases a day. Now, getting to this housing story, the NDP government in BC has actually been leasing hotels to deal with homelessness, but this is actually the first case of them purchasing a hotel, and this purchase is in Victoria, BC. The province paid approximately $18.5 million to acquire the Comfort Inn. While this was an outright purchase, the province has also leased hotels in Victoria and Vancouver to house people during the pandemic. According to Simpson, the government tries to hire back staff that have been laid off at the hotels. The minister called leasing hotels, quote, a bit of a win-win situation for hotel operators who can earn some revenue while tourism and travel are on hold. The Comfort Inn will be operated by Our Place Society, a local organization that already offers support to the homeless. The society has partnered with BC Housing to provide hotel occupants with meals, healthcare services, storage for personal belongings, as well as addictions treatment and harm reduction. The hotel will be staffed 24/7 to provide security to the building's residents and the surrounding neighborhood. So this is not only about housing, but also about helping people that are in dire situations, be it with food, treatment, and harm reduction services. Now, obviously, this is the most humane way to combat homelessness, to actually house the homeless. But the argument against this is always, oh, how can we possibly pay for this? It must be so expensive to house the homeless as opposed to what? Policing and crime? Addiction? Healthcare? I mean, think of all of the issues that arise with homelessness and the costs that are associated with that. Yet when you house the homeless, it is actually less expensive, in addition to being obviously the most humane way to deal with it. And there's a lot of reporting and studies that look into this. So to give you a few examples, here is in Central Florida, this is from the Orlando Sentinel. Living on the streets isn't cheap. Each chronically homeless person in Central Florida costs the community roughly $31,000 a year. A new analysis being released Thursday shows. This is back in 2014. The price tag covers the salaries of law enforcement officers to arrest and transport homeless individuals, largely for non-violent offenses such as trespassing, public intoxication, or sleeping in parks, as well as the cost of jail stays, emergency room visits, and hospitalization for medical and psychiatric issues. In contrast, providing the chronically homeless with permanent housing and case managers to supervise them would run about $10,000 per person per year, saving taxpayers millions of dollars during the next decade, the report concludes. So costs actually triple when it comes to dealing with homelessness in these traditional ways, as opposed to just housing them and giving them a caseworker. Now, of course, there are also many more examples of housing the homeless working. So this from Vox, a 2017 RAND Corporation analysis of the Housing for Health program in LA County concluded that the county saved about 20% by putting people with complex mental health issues in supportive housing rather than relying on law enforcement and emergency room visits. A 2015 randomized controlled trial of a housing-first approach across several Canadian cities saw essentially no change in money spent. Canada's structurally lower healthcare costs are likely a factor here, but gains in quality of life and community functioning. A separate randomized trial study in Toronto found that Housing First was effective in combating alcohol abuse disorders. Earlier studies from Charlotte and southeastern Colorado also show large cost savings from focusing on simply housing the homeless. So this is the obvious way to deal with homelessness, especially during a pandemic like this, where we are seeing a lot more people going homeless due to the fact that many more people are losing their job, losing their income. Now, the other arguments that come up against this, stuff like, what incentive do people have when they can just live in free housing? As if people would choose to live in government-provided homes with no real power over their actual living situation. So I don't even get that argument on its face. But you may still think, with the cost of rent being what it is, that many people might decide that it makes more sense to live in these government provided homes as opposed to actually, paying for rent. But then the issue there is, well, why is rent so damn high? It's not that, oh, people shouldn't be living in these homes. We shouldn't offer these homes to people. The actual issue is that the cost of rent shouldn't be what it is. So a report from a team of researchers from the University of New Hampshire, Boston University, and University of Pennsylvania discussed this and found that homelessness rises faster where rent exceeds a third of income. So you see here the graph. Homelessness climbs faster when rent affordability reaches 22% and 32% thresholds. An uptick in rent affordability beyond 22% translates into more people experiencing homelessness. Beyond 32% means a faster rising rate of homelessness, which could mean a homelessness crisis unless there are mitigating factors within a community. So all of the evidence and all of the arguments point to housing the homeless working. So to just right now see the BC government doing this, again, a more left-wing worker party in the NDP doing this in British Columbia, I mean, I'm glad they're setting the example here. But even if you're a conservative government and you care about fiscal responsibility, you should also be looking at housing the homeless as a way to combat homelessness.